Okay. Graduated high school in 1982 from West Point. I'm from West Point, Mississippi. I went to Mississippi State University for a couple of semesters, but back at that time, college just wasn't for me. So I went to work in the oil fields for about 4 or 5 years, and then we kind of got laid off and things kind of slacked off in those years. I moved to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, and started working with a guy with a landscape company, and did that a couple years, and actually moved back to Mississippi and went to see a friend of mine at Old Waverly Golf Course there in West Point. They had just finished building the course and getting it up and running, and he asked me what I was going to do, and I said, well, I really don't have a job, so I got to find something to do. And he said, well, we're hiring maintenance people. He said it's going to be part-time. We'll just kind of see how it goes. So I started on the maintenance crew, raking bunkers, fly mowing, weed eating, just doing all the grunt work stuff, and started spraying a little bit. And Superintendent Bill said, well, we've got a couple full-time positions open, so would you like to take that? And I said, sure, I'd love to. Wow. So I kind of started there, and he kind of taught me how to spray. I moved from spray technician to fertilizing to doing a few other, additional things. And he said that it was working out real well, and maybe, if I wanted to kind of start getting books and kind of reading and doing some, some things like that, I could move up. So I started taking books out of his office and just reading, just trying to catch. Cause I had no idea what the golf business was. I never played golf, and I'd never been in the golf business, and so I kind of worked my way up from there and stayed there about 3 years and helped them out. I actually got to work at Augusta two tournaments at the Masters, thanks to Mr. Bryan. He took us, a couple guys over there. And so that was a great experience for us because TV just doesn't do that golf course justice. I mean, it's awesome. Sure. So I went from there, and another guy came out and was actually playing golf at the golf course one day, and he said, I'm doing a lot of other renovation work, and I need some good irrigation people. And I said, well, I really don't know that much about it, but, I think at this time that might be something for me. So I went and talked to Bill, Superintendent. He said, sure. He said, I hate to see you go. You're a great guy. He said, but, when you got the experience, you should grab it while you can. Sure. So I went to golf course construction for a while and did irrigation on the golf course and on sports fields and ball fields, along with just numerous amounts of other things. I ran a crew for 3 years and all that, and I got a great experience with Toro and Rainbird systems, putting them in, installing, fixing leaks, just your main maintenance breaks and things like that. And I worked for him for a couple, 2 or 3 years. And actually the same guy that I went to high school with, that was at Old Waverly, he had talked to another guy, and they were building another golf course close to home. Wow. So he called me and he said, well, I need some good people. He said, I know you have experience with all this. He said, I need a good irrigation guy to help install irrigation systems. So I went back to work for him for about 4 years, just kind of renovating, and we built several golf courses around home. River Birch Golf Course is where I came from. And I just kind of stayed with him for 2 or 3 years. He had another project going on in Starkville, and he was just getting it up and running, and I stayed with him, built 9 holes over there. It was around the college condos and things. Yeah. And I stayed with him for a pretty good while, and then another friend of mine, Andy Franks, that was actually at River Birch. He was our golf pro before. The other superintendent had just walked out the door one day. He had just decided, I guess, I've had enough. I just can't take it anymore or whatever, and he just said, heck, I'm gone. Yeah. So Andy called me and he said, do you know anybody be interested? And I said, well, yeah, I might. I said, it's been a while since I did any of that part of it, but, I have that experience. And he said, okay. He said, we'll come up here, we'll have to get the board to hire you, which I knew all those people, and went up there and got the job. And I started there in 1996, and the Greens had just completely, he had just let them just go. I mean, they had just, I think he had just got kind of to the point, and a lot of times superintendents do get to that point. I mean, you just get to the point where you just burn out, and you just, you just want to just take off and just go home and not ever come back. And I think that's to the point where he had gotten. So we had to go in and redo the greens and do a lot of other additional work that he just hadn't he just hadn't had the motivation to do or whatever for years. And I got it back up and going, and it was a couple years before everything straightened out. And then I was at River Birch from 1996 till 2001, till I actually came out here. Andy, which had hired me at River Birch, had actually moved out here to take this position, and he knew Garrick Schraub was probably eventually going to be leaving. So Garrick actually did leave, and another guy had taken over, and he said that they were going to have to do some changes. And I said, well, I really don't want to leave where I'm at. I have great members. The golf course is in great shape. It's been number 5 in the state the past 5 or 6 years. So I really hate to leave, so I just came out to visit him, and just happened to be the day the city manager, Bill Davison, and several other people were out here just looking around. They said, look, we got to do some changes. Would you be interested? Yeah, I kind of hesitated, and I went back home, thought about it for a couple weeks, and talked to some of the members, and they said, well, you can't leave, but if you need to move up, then we can't stop you. We always want you to move up and and to go. So anyway, I came out here and interviewed and got this position. We had bent grass back then, and they were having a lot of issues with it. And we have a lot of trouble with water. Our water has a lot of salts and stuff in it. And actually, this project across the street over here was really kind of getting going. And back then, it didn't have a whole lot of homes. And the guy that was doing all that work and stuff, a lot of the sand and mud and silt and stuff was coming over on the golf course, going down the creek, going down and going out into the irrigation lake. So as they were pumping the water, it was just throwing mud and silt on the greens and stuff, and it had just choked them out, and that was one of the issues that they were having. So we got all that stuff straightened out, and we redone the greens and added some drainage and stuff to those. This is 2001, and kind of got started with those projects, and just we just did some things here and there, just trying to get the greens up and going, because there were only 6 or 7 greens that were even playable. Really? The other ones had they had just gotten really bad, and they weren't doing the things that they needed to do. So I took over that, and that was in 2001, and we kind of got everything going. It took a couple years, and then we decided that the bent grass was it's just so much work. I mean, the heat, the water. I mean, you need at least 12 guys here, hand water, and the budget just wasn't enough. So I went to my boss, Dave, he's our director, and told him, I said, maybe it's time we make a change and either go with Champions or some of this other stuff, because they want to put 35 to 40,000 rounds a year on here every year, and the bent grass just can't handle it. The heat and stuff and all that. So I went to him, and he said, well, that's a good idea. So he took it to city council, and we approved to have the greens redone in 2004. And we resurfaced those, got all that construction part of it went real well, because I had worked with a guy that I'd worked with before building greens from Alabama, and he actually got the contract to do it. So he worked real well with us, and when you know somebody in the business that you've worked with before, it makes it a whole lot easier, because you can just kind of, I was still doing my job, but instead of me having to just walk around every 10 minutes, watching him, it was pretty much, okay, here's what we want to do. You knew it was going to get done. I knew it was going to get done. He did a good job. So we resurfaced the greens, got all that old bad material and stuff out, and put Champion in, and we've been rolling pretty good up until we decided to do the renovation. And
now, do you have to close when you redo the greens?
When we redone the greens, we closed July the 5th of that year, and we opened back up October the 1st.
Okay.
So we wasn't closed all that long, but he came in, and Skip, which is the guy that I worked with over there, he did a great job. I mean, we had to take 4 or 5 inches of the old hard. What had happened is all that silt over those years had just made like a big chalky hard layer. Compacted it all in, so we had to go in, till all that stuff up, and put some good material in there, and redone everything on that, and we were doing real good. I mean, everything, but after 10, 15, 20 years, golf course has to have some work done to it, and we had talked about it before, Dave and I had, and some of the city council members. had talked about redoing some stuff. And what we were going to do at first was just go in and the areas that were bad and didn't have any topsoil and needed to be redone, we were just going to go in and just kind of fix those areas up and do. And some of the city council members just really balked at that. You know, why do we want to patch things up when we can have a renovation job and just kind of do, you know, do what we want to do and get the budget to where we need to be so, you know, we can get more people out here. Yeah. And it went to city council, and actually Chesapeake wanted to build a lake to get the dirt to build these pads that they're doing right over that way. So that kind of got the ball rolling, and then they were going to purchase the water from us out of the lake, and that was really one of the main reasons that it came down to actually doing the renovation. So it went back and forth, and then finally it got going, and then John Colligan came out, and he looked around and saw what we needed to do, and you know, of course, he made a presentation to council and did what he needed to do to get it kind of going. And John's fabulous to work with. He did a great job with the redesign and just taking the holes that we had and making different holes out of it, but keeping the holes the way they were. Yeah. We get a lot of public golf out here, and it's perfect for that. The golf course, I think it's a lot more playable as far as being able to get around the course now, because we changed the holes up, and now you don't have that big hill on 17 to come up to as you finish up on 18, and it's actually rearranged and stuff. But we got started on that. We closed in March of last year, March the 5th or 6th of last year, and got started with the reconstruction. And just kind of got it up and going, and working back and forth with those guys. And that was, I had actually done 3 or 4 grow-ins, and this has probably been one of the hardest ones I've ever had to do. Okay. And this one's kind of this one was one of the toughest one I had ever done, because we still had 8 holes that we were still having to work on and maintain the greens and fairways and tees and airify and do all the things we had to do, plus keep the construction part of it going with these guys and watch them, and keep the water and stuff going, because as you know, you've got bulldozers and trenchers and track hoes and stuff out here, and you're moving dirt and you're running. You cut a pipe over here. Well, this is the main line that runs over here to number 4. Well, 4, 5, and 6 doesn't have any water. So, but the guy that was doing irrigation, he was really good to work with. Those guys really did a good job. We had the watering stuff was real tough this year, because we had only a certain amount of sod versus sprigs instead of everything being sod or sprigs. So that was a challenge in itself, because you're trying to water the sod a certain amount every day to try to keep it going, and then these guys will come in the next week and start trying to sprig, and with the sprigging machines and tractors and stuff, well, you're trying to water sod all day long, and keep it soaking wet and keep it going, and then these guys will come out and try to get everything sprigged, well, the tractors, and then they're upset, well, you're watering. Well, you have to water to keep this stuff going. So that was different, because any of the courses I've ever done at home and in my past, it was either all sprigs or all sod. And we had a certain amount of sod that we could use and a certain amount of sprigs, with the money and stuff. So that was a pretty big challenge this time, but everything went well. I think everything on the course is in really good shape. We were only closed 7 months during that renovation, and that's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of, actually when we redid our course at home, we were closed about 1.5 years and done just about the same amount of work. So we really pushed real hard to get this up and going, and I think once everything has a growing year, everything has to grow in, but this will be the first year that it's growing in. I think everybody will be really pleased with what they have here in Burleson, and I think the golf course is going to be something that is within this year, especially the next year, it's going to be something that's going to be really, really nice. Sure. And I think after we get a good 1 year in, and we're on cart paths now. Oh yeah. So that deters a lot of people from coming out. People just don't want to walk.
Sure.
You know, a lot of people do, and we've had a lot of people come out and they've played the course and they love it. But I think once we get off the cart paths in May and people can start coming out, I think we'll be swamped. I really do. We're going to keep a couple holes cart path only, number 2 and number 9, because those were 2 of the last ones that we sprigged at late last year, and I think if we give those a little bit more time this summer to grow in, then I think it's going. I think that would be great for us. We're going to actually rotate a couple of the fairways out, 1 and 18. We'll keep them on the cart paths on 1, maybe 2 weeks. Move it over to 18. That way, it kind of rotates some of our new fairways out. Kind of helps them get grown in better. And all the bunkers were redone. We took all the old sand and all that old material out, and John redesigned all the bunkers. So before they had put a brown sand in there, and then I don't think the other guy liked that, so he took all that and just put white sand on top of it. Yeah. And I think it was just kind of like you're just modeling clay. You're just trying to fix existing problems instead of doing what was needed to be done. So everything out here has been completely redone. The driving range has all been completely redone. Before it was just pretty much just like a barren desert, with just dirt out there. So it's been redone. We've got a lot, like I said, the sprigs and stuff, that's the hardest part of growing in. I mean, they just take so much water, so much fertilizer. I mean, it's constantly just watching them, and just going. And I really think if we had it to do all over again, it costs a little bit more to put the sod down, but I really think if you go sod wall to wall everywhere you can get opened back up a lot faster. Your fertilizer costs go down probably half. Your watering goes down probably half. And you're pretty much ready to cut the height that you want in a month and a half. But once it gets grown in and everything's going, you can start cutting it and you can go out there and start playing on it. With the sprigs, you're talking about little bitty thin wedges of grass, don't want to be too technical, and it's just kind of thrown out there, and it looks like when you cut your yard with little deals and you're putting it out there and you've got areas this big that have to grow together, and it takes a lot of time to get them done. But I think if we ever were to do it again, which I don't think we'll ever do anything like this again, but if I was consulting or do anything, I would recommend that people just go straight sod, get it done, get it finished up. You're opened up in half the time, and your budget and stuff wise. But
how much of that, when you say if I had to do it over again, how much of that pertains to North Texas and doing it here? I mean, is that a silly question to ask because of what we do? I mean, because of the weather that we have here, is that why you're making that recommendation?
Well, I think it depends on your time frame and you want to open. If you're redoing your golf course and you want to shut down in March and you have 2 years to open back up, sure, I think it's fine to go ahead and sprig and do that because you've got plenty of time. Sprigs they're so particular. I mean, you might get a real good batch and you have no trouble with them. Then you might get some, and it's an extra 2 months before they ever start moving and growing together. And it's just a time frame thing. I think if you close and you say, okay, we've got 2 years before we open back up, so let's do that. That gives those sprigs a whole one time and then a whole another year to grow. Yeah. When sod, I mean, it comes on the big rolls. You roll it out. You fertilize it once right before you put any of the sod down. You fertilize again in about 3 weeks, and then you fertilize again in about 3 weeks. Well, by the time that second fertilizing's there, you're ready to start cutting. Yeah. I mean, because all the sod number 18, all those are the first holes we sprigged, 18, and then the sprigs were there's a lot of shade on that hole, and we were having a lot of trouble getting the sprigs to just move. They were doing fine, but you know, as you get closer and closer to opening, you know, it was getting September and some of those holes were, I mean, mid-August, the end of there, it was getting so close to going, well, are we going to be ready to open, you know, by October? Yeah. So we went back in and City Council actually approved to go from halfway of that fairway all the way up to the green with sod, which that really helped tremendously because, you know, in 6 weeks we were cutting and mowing and we opened up in October, and the grass, I mean, it still takes time. You know, I think a lot of people don't realize what all goes on out here. I worked 178 days straight in a row without a day off. Wow. From 4 o'clock in the morning till sometimes 10 o'clock at night. Wow. I mean, I was here 178 days in a row without, I mean, anything. I mean, I was here when those guys got here, and when the last piece of sod was put down, I was here. It had to have water on it. We had to get everything up and going, and I think a lot of people don't realize what goes on out on the golf course. You know, I have a lot of people telling me all the time, yeah, I wish I could get your position. You know, you ride around on your little cart all day long, just kind of hanging out. Well, I really think if people were actually to see what superintendents go through on a daily basis, not just the things that we have to do, but other things. I mean, we have so much things going on, budgets, and you have all your people, and then you're constantly stressed about water, you're stressed about this, you're stressed about that, and I really think if people had to fill in our shoes for about 2 weeks as superintendent, I really think they would give us a lot more respect than we get.
So when Chesapeake came on, you're talking about you guys. I assume it means that they helped with the cost of the renovation.
Yes.
And in return, put some wells on your property.
Right, correct. Yeah, that was part of the deal when Chesapeake came in. They needed dirt to build these pads over on I forgot where they're at, but they needed that, so they kind of came in, and we were trying to do the renovation all at kind of the same time, which it worked out very good because they came in and actually said, okay, we'll build the lake, we'll purchase the dirt from y'all, we'll actually put a well on property to fill the lake back up so we can purchase the water from you when we do these wells. And that worked out real good because that was probably over half of our cost of what we were doing. And that I really think if Chesapeake hadn't stepped in to build the lake and to buy the dirt and do some of these other things, I'm really not sure if the project would have ever went 100% that way.
Really?
Yeah.
When did they get involved? I mean, is that was long before the renovation, right?
Yeah. The renovation and things started about a year before we actually ever done anything. Yeah. But like I said, we went back and some of the city council members, we were just going to go in, have a company come in, scrape the fairways down that were bad, like number 2 over there. I don't know if you remember, it had the concrete deal running through it. Yeah. So we wanted to go in there and scrape the areas down that needed to be done and just put topsoil in there. And there were several of them that just didn't want to patch things up. And Chesapeake they had decided that they wasn't going to do any more wells at that time. They were kind of done in this area. And then 3 or 4 months later, it all turned around. The guy said, well, we've been doing a lot of research and stuff, and we think this area right here is, and what can we do? And they were actually going to go over by Bailey Lake. In between Bailey Lake, there's another little small lake over there. I don't know if you're ever off of Dobson there. Well, they were going to go in there and expand that lake out, fill it up, and get their water from there. Well, then they went back and forth, and then John came out, and we started talking about the renovation part of it, and the guy from Chesapeake said, well, why don't we just build you guys a lake? You need an extra irrigation lake, which we do, and we'll purchase the dirt from you and the water and put you a well on site. Wow. So that was a big cost, and after it went back and forth several times to some of the city council members, it all finally got it all finally kind of got going. And once the ball kind of got rolling, everything took off. And we went from this project going a year down the line until 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Now it went in October. It was going to be the following year when everything kind of went and got started, and then it went from then until December. They had just about decided that it was going to be. We were going to try to go all the way through the spring and summer and get another good summer in, close down in October because they were going to start doing the wells. And then that kind of all changed. They decided they were going to start doing the wells this next year, so we needed to get on the ball and get everything up and going so we could close down in March and get everything going by October so we could be up, have the golf course running, the lakes would be full, and they were actually supposed to start fracking the wells in December, and they pushed it back so we could kind of get things up and running here and get some things going. And I talked to the guy this morning, and he said they were about 3/4 of the way of finishing the final frac stages. So it was real good for us because they contributed a whole bunch to this project, and if it hadn't been for their contributions and their buying the dirt, paying for the water, and paying for the well, I'm not really sure if the project would ever went. To be honest with you, it was at first where it was played, it just didn't pan out like John anticipated it was. But now you got a good par 3 that you have to hit over the water to number 8, and then we have number 11 is over here. It's kind of basically the same way it was. If you remember how 11 played, we moved the tees over more towards the water. John did, and actually that number 11 green is actually a new green.
Oh, really?
So now with the pin and the new bunker, the pin back in the back left with the new bunker there, that's a good par 3. That's a real good hole, and everything, all the bunkers were redone. This hole was a hard hole to grow in. This area right here was one of the toughest holes to grow in because of the slope and the angle and the water. When the new sod and stuff was going down, we had a lot of washouts and a lot of problems with this area right here.
Yeah.
I think once everything gets rated out here and we get up and running, I think these 4 holes, whether you're on 10, 8, 9T, 11T, or 12, and you're looking back this way or looking that way, I think those are the 4 best golf holes that I think will be around. I think once this is, you got the big irrigation lake, which we didn't have before. It's a little bit over 5 1/4 acres.
Wow.
And it is out where the 2 aerators are on that end. It's about 15 or 16 feet deep. So when we were having the 2 small irrigation lakes, we would have to kind of make our water last to say, we wanted to make sure we didn't run out, and not that we cut back, but we would kind of cut back in areas in the rough that didn't need the water as much as the fairways and the tees and the other stuff. Now with the big lake, it's tied together to all 3 lakes, so as each lake goes, they all drop down at the same amount. This will enable us to water as we need, give it 2/10 a day, 3, how much ever we need to give it, and we'll be able to water correctly with the new irrigation system. And I really think it's going to be something that after everything gets grown back in, I really think people around here are really going to be pleased with what we've got and what's been done.
Now, what were you saying? I mean, when you were talking earlier, I don't know that he was set up, but you said something about John and the job he did and the double greens. You mind going over that again?
No, sure. Well, when this hole was originally supposed to be going, we were going to do a double green. Mm-hmm. This hole was supposed to play back and kind of where the green is now was supposed to shift back that way, and this was going to be a huge double green, like a big, you play 10 from this angle and you play 8 from this angle, and then we were going to be able to flip-flop back and forth with the holes. It just didn't line up the way we all wanted it to, so John kind of took that out and moved that green over on number 8 and moved the tees and stuff back. And I really think the way that he done that, I really like it better than I think we would the double green. We built the double green at my old golf course at home with 17 and 11 together. The problem with double greens, you got somebody hitting in from a par 5 and you got somebody hitting in from a par 3. There's always going to be somebody, either the ball is going to be coming at somebody or they're going to be playing and people are going to be coming in. So I think this whole area, not only just the golf course, but I think these 4 holes, no matter where you're at out here, you're coming down 10 fairway when everything's green. You've got this green, this is all greened up. You've got 9 here, you've got 11, you've got 8. All this, I think all this is such, it's going to be so beautiful out here when everything is up and done. You're going to have so many features and stuff out here.
Yeah.
And I really think that the way it is now, number 12, we had all those trees and stuff in there, and John took all those trees out. Now it's a great hole. I think everything that was done out here, I think in a year or two, it's really going to be something that's going to be spectacular.
Well, help me out then. If I remember right, the cart path came from there and crept around here.
Right, yeah.
So all this, how much of this, it seems, and it's hard for me to figure out, but it seems like that green is new. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
And then where did the course actually stop before?
Actually, when you would play coming up, that over there was 17 as you coming up, and you're right. The cart path came up and tied back in up here and came back this way. Well, everything from inside the fence over all the way to that side on the new number 9, this whole area right in here, all this is completely new. Everything in here is new. All this was built back in. Those you have 10, 8, 11, and then number 9 as used to play 10.
Yeah.
As you go back up there, that's a new green complex too. So all this whole area right here was completely redone. It didn't have any of the tie-in. All this is completely redone with topsoil, the dirt, the slopes, the mounds, and everything. And number 1 actually plays to number 2 green. Remember, number 2 was a par 3.
Right.
Well, we took that green out, number 1 green, and extended it out and made the green you'll actually play to number 2 green. Now, so it's now a real good opening par 5 hole. That's sure.
Are these fields part of your responsibility as well?
No, we actually took one of the ball fields out. There was actually a ball field that extended out from about number 8 tees out into about halfway into that lake and took up half of this portion right here.
Oh, really?
So I consult with them a lot on trying to help them with things over there, but that's the city parks, and we actually thought at first we was going to take that ball field there out and play up this way to 10. And there were several different venues, and John took everything and just kind of made everything fit in together good, and it really is. It's really going to be something good. I mean, it's good now, but I really think when everything grows in and we get things going, I really think it's going to be something that everybody's going to be proud of.